The red light at Madison Road turned green just as the pickup behind us decided not to stop. Metal exploded glass flew like a rain of razors, and my 6-year-old daughter Lily made a sound I will hear in my nightmares until I die. The airbag punched me in the face, and the world spun sideways, smelling of burned rubber and blood. A stranger ripped the door open and kept shouting, "Keep her awake," but her little head slumped toward me, and I thought her neck had broken. The ambulance lights painted her skin blue, while the paramedic forced a tube down her throat, and I held her foot because it was the only part of her body not covered in blood or tape. In the ICU, they spoke fast, a blur of ventilator anesthesia, oxygen saturation. Machines beeped like digital screams. When the doctor said the words life support, I felt my bones turn hollow. I reached for my phone to call my mother, just wanting someone to care, someone to sit with me while my child fought to live. The screen lit up before I could dial. It was a group text from my mother, Joanne, my sister Haley, and my father, Richard. "Bring cupcakes tomorrow. Do not embarrass us." Haley added, "Kids get hurt. Cupcakes due at 9 a.m. I stared at the screen so long the nurse thought I had fainted. The doctor was explaining brain swelling and possible surgery, while my family demanded frosting. A beat later, the phone buzzed again. A voicemail from Joanne, and somehow I hit speaker, and the entire waiting room heard her voice blast out, loud and sharp like a knife. "You always want attention, Rachel. Stop the drama. A mother should know how to act dignified in public." I tried to shut it off, but people were turning to stare. An older man holding a Bible shook his head, like he had just witnessed a sin. A woman pulled her teenage daughter closer and whispered something I was never meant to hear. Maybe her family knows she does this for attention. My face burned so hot I thought I would pass out. A nurse quietly turned off the speaker, but the shame had already settled in my skin. When the doctor came back, I tried to listen. He told me the ICU stay ventilator hours, CT scans, sedation, neurology consults, and emergency trauma fees would run about $18,700 after insurance, depending on the deductible. Then he asked a question no mother should ever have to hear while her child is unconscious. Do you have someone who can help with payment if there is an issue with insurance authorization? Insurance authorization. The words made my stomach drop. We had changed plans in January when my mother convinced me to switch to her employer's cheaper plan. Cheaper. My hands shook as I logged into the portal and saw a red alert blinking on the screen. Authorization pending. Possible denial. Out-of-network physician. The doctor stepped away and I opened Lily's UTMA account because it was the only money we had left if insurance refused part of the bill. The balance was wrong, shockingly low. I called the bank, my heart pounding so hard my voice warped. After verifying my identity, the representative read the transaction calmly, like she was reading a grocery list. A withdrawal of $5,450 by custodian Joanne Lawson. Party expenses. My mother had emptied Lily's college fund to pay for balloons and cake stands while my child lay dying. The bank rep whispered, "I am so sorry," because I had stopped talking. When the call ended, I tried to get water from the vending machine because my throat felt like it was full of knives, but the machine ate my money and nothing dropped. I stared at my reflection in the metal door until my vision blurred. Then a woman I barely knew. Nia slapped the side of the machine and the bottle finally fell. She pressed it into my hand like a lifeline. "You look like you need someone on your side." I went back into the ICU, past the people who had just heard my mother's voicemail, past the glares and the whispering about dramatic moms. Lily's hand was cold and covered in tape, her stuffed bear lying beside her with one button eye missing. I leaned close, so only she could hear. "You are worth more than cupcakes and family image and whatever ugly thing they turned into." Then something inside me snapped, so quietly, I almost missed it. I realized my family would rather protect their reputation than their blood. They stole from my child, shamed me in public, and called it dignity. I laid my head next to Lily and whispered a promise I intended to keep. "I choose you, not them. Never again." I sat in the cold plastic chair outside Lily's ICU room after the second nurse changed my back aching from hours of sitting straight. And for the first time since the crash, I felt my brain settling enough to think about how we even got here. I am 34, an accounting clerk at Oakley Home and Hardware on Madison Road part-time, because Lily's asthma made full-time unpredictable. I earn $23.50 per hour, 26 to 30 hours a week. If no one calls out, and that paycheck has always been stretched like thin wire over rent, groceries, and Lily's school supplies. I rent a small 2-bedroom near Alt Park. Nothing fancy, just a space big enough for us and her books and her tiny pink socks that never seem to find their pairs. I use a health savings account with $1,200 per year and a dependent care FSA with $2,500 that was already empty by February because Lily needed after-school tutoring. I have never been careless with money. I know the price of gas down to the penny. I calculated every coupon before stepping into Kroger, and when Lily wanted a new backpack, I waited for a clearance sale. My parents, Joanne and Richard, never let me forget it. They live 10 minutes away in Hyde Park in a house full of polished wood and curated decor like a magazine spread. Joanne is on the PTA finance committee, and she loves being seen, loves the camera, loves being the mother who has her life put together. My sister Haley is the same, always posting perfect photos on Instagram with captions about gratitude and motherhood and family love, while her real life is a balancing act of private complaints and public bragging. Madison, her daughter, is the golden child of the family, not because she is sweet, but because she is expensive. There is always a new dance costume, a new tablet, a new something to show off. They used to joke that I was the poor branch of the Lawson tree, a joke told with laughter so light that no one seemed to notice how it landed like a slap. When Lily was born, I set up a UTMA account and put every extra dollar into it: birthday money tax, refund scraps, overtime hours. By late 2023, the balance was $6,750, and I took a photo of the screen like someone takes a picture of a newborn. Joanne saw it one night when she came to drop off a box of hand-me-down clothes from Madison. She smiled with a kindness so smooth it did not feel real, and said money needed guardianship, that families who are respectable manage finances with dignity. She convinced me to switch the custodian role of the UTMA to her so she could protect it from taxes and unnecessary spending. I believed her because I wanted to believe my mother cared. In January, I asked for $120 from the account to get Lily new prescription glasses after she failed her school vision screening. Joanne folded her hands like a judge in a courtroom and said, "Future only. Lily can walk with an old pair for now." Yet the next day, Madison wore a watch worth $399, shiny and oversized, and Haley proudly posted it on Instagram with a caption about how children deserve the best. Meanwhile, my daughter tilted her head in class because the world looked blurry. I swallowed that humiliation the way I swallowed every humiliation from them since the day I became a single mother. They dressed their cruelty in lace and called it class. The night of the crash, after the first doctor update, I scrolled through my old Venmo history just to distract myself from the beeping machines. That was when I found the first twist. Months ago, Haley had sent a payment request to Joanne for a party deposit, $1,200, and the memo line said, "For Maddie's party, do not tell R." I stared at it, my heart pounding like an alarm. They used my daughter's college fund for balloons and rented backdrops and cake stands. The same night, Joanne showed up in her pressed coat and perfect hair to teach me how to pipe cupcake frosting. She squeezed the bag in slow circles and said a mother must present well so her child will not be ashamed of her. I held a cupcake covered in crooked frosting and wanted to cry or laugh or scream because she made it sound like dignity could be bought with buttercream. She called it an investment in the family name, a way to redeem my lack of elegance. "Rachel, do not embarrass us," she said every time Lily's shoes were scuffed or her hair was not brushed perfectly for church. Now those same women were demanding cupcakes while Lily lay connected to machines that pushed air into her lungs. I thought about all the small cuts that led here. The time Haley suggested I should take fewer photos of Lily at school events because it made me look desperate. The time Joanne told a neighbor that I was dramatic with finances because poverty makes women emotional. The time they whispered about me at Thanksgiving while passing dishes I could barely afford to help cook. Those little cruelties, those tiny humiliations, they piled up like glass shards under bare feet. Sitting outside the ICU, I realized every piece of my life they touched turned into a stage for their pride. They cared more about being admired than loving their own blood. I pressed my palm to the ICU window and saw Lily's small chest rise with mechanical rhythm, tubing taped to her skin, her teddy bear tucked next to her like a broken guardian. My family built their reputation on pretend kindness and real betrayal, and for years I let it slide because I did not want Lily to grow up with no grandparents. Now I understood that Lily never had grandparents, only spectators who cared about the performance. Watching those monitors blink, I felt something inside me start to harden like concrete setting. I told myself quietly that when she woke up, if she woke up, I would never let anyone humiliate her again. And if that meant standing alone, I would do it. That UPME account, that money they claimed to protect it, was my daughter's future. They treated it like their personal wallet, and now insurance might deny part of the ICU bill because Joanne pushed me into a cheap plan for optics. Every penny they stole became another nail in the coffin of whatever family we used to be. I looked at the Venmo screenshot until my vision blurred, then saved it 3 times in the cloud in my email in a hidden folder. Paper beats noise, I whispered, tasting the steel of the words. Maybe they had the bigger voices, the louder judgments, but I had the truth and the receipts. And in a world obsessed with reputation, the truth can shatter glass like a stone. The first time I felt the humiliation tighten around my throat like a rope was 2 months before the crash on a Saturday morning inside the fellowship hall of Hyde Park Methodist, where the PTA moms gathered with clipboards and color-coded charts to plan Madison's birthday party. The room smelled like lemon polish and coffee, and sunlight poured through tall windows onto the polished hardwood floor. Joanne walked in, wearing pearls and a navy sweater that matched the church banners, and everyone greeted her the way people greet someone important with smiles a little too wide. She waved at me like I was an unpaid assistant and not her daughter. I stood by the folding table with a tray of cupcakes I had practiced all night. The frosting leaned to one side because my hands were shaking from exhaustion and too much cheap instant coffee. Joanne tapped her spoon against a mug to get attention and said we were lucky to have Rachel, because although she tends to overdo things, her heart is in the right place. A ripple of polite laughter passed through the women, and someone whispered something that made another mom hide a smile behind her cup. My cheeks burned, but I swallowed it down the same way I had swallowed every insult since Lily was born. We reviewed the shopping list for the party, and it read like a wedding budget. Oversized balloons with a metallic finish, a custom cake with hand-painted flowers, a photo backdrop with artificial roses and fairy lights, a DJ who charged $250 for 2 hours, a photographer who charged $300 for an edited gallery. Joanne said she would advance all of it because she understood what class looked like, and the committee nodded like that made her a saint. I thought about Lily squinting through old glasses because I was told that $120 was too much to take from her own account. When I gently mentioned that Lily still needed new frames and that the UTMA was meant for her benefit, Joanne waved her hand like shooing away a fly and said, "Do not burn the fund for petty things. Focus on the future, not the present." It was the same phrase she used every time she wanted money to make herself look good. Just as the meeting wrapped up, she called me over to help sort receipts for the event. I gathered the papers and saw one sheet that did not match the rest, just a half-crumpled invoice printed in haste. The number at the bottom was $5,400-something, and my stomach clenched because it matched the withdrawal I had seen disappear from the UTMA. I tried to read more, but Joanne snatched the paper and tucked it into her planner with a smile so sweet it stung. "You do not need to worry about grown-up numbers, honey. Leave that to me." The PTA moms chuckled softly. Not cruel, just amused as if I were a child playing adult. The worst part was how natural it felt to them, how normal it was to treat me like a servant in my own family. On my way out, I stopped near the counter to pack the cupcakes I brought for taste testing. Yesterday, I had stayed up until midnight watching videos on how to pipe frosting into perfect swirls. I thought maybe if I could make them beautiful, maybe Joanne would stop calling me an embarrassment. But the moment I lifted the tray, one cupcake toppled sideways, and the frosting slid off like a sad little hat. Joanne glanced over with a cold smile and said in front of everyone that I was going to make Madison look foolish if I could not even manage a cupcake. The room burst into that awkward laughter people do when they try not to choose sides. I felt the humiliation hit my spine. The cupcake lay on its side, frosting smashed against the plastic tray, and somehow it felt like I was the one on the floor. I closed the lid and carried it out to my car while my heart thudded against my ribs. I sat behind the wheel and stared at my hands. The frosting stained my fingers like chalky paint. A couple of moms walked by outside the window, and I heard one of them say that poor Rachel tries so hard, but some women just do not have the right image for PTA life. I wanted to disappear, but humiliation is not always loud. Sometimes it is a whisper that follows you around the grocery store. Sometimes it is a laugh that you pretend not to hear. Sometimes it is your own mother mocking your effort in front of strangers. The following week, Joanne held another planning session at the church. I did not want to go, but she called and said if I skipped, people would think our family was falling apart. I forced myself to go. When I arrived, the women were discussing decorations. Joanne pulled out a spreadsheet that listed expenses down to napkins and helium tanks. She bragged about being fiscally responsible, saying a good mother knows how to manage funds. I could not stop thinking about Lily's blurred vision. As we packed up, a loose paper fell from Joanne's binder, and my heart jolted. It was the same invoice, the same number staring at me like a confession, 5,400 something. I bent to pick it up, but Joanne's hand swooped in first. She smiled through gritted teeth and told me not to be nosy. The PTA moms looked at us like they smelled scandal. She hugged me too tightly and said in a voice loud enough for everyone to hear that I was prone to emotional outbursts. They nodded, pitying me, believing her. The humiliation crept deeper. On the drive home, I replayed her words in my head until my skull hurt. Later, I practiced cupcakes again, hands shaking with determination. At midnight, I dropped the piping bag and frosting splattered across my shirt. I stared at myself in the mirror and saw a woman trying to earn love she would never receive. I thought the humiliation could not get worse, but I was wrong. At church the next morning, she presented a sample tray of cupcakes I made, and while I prayed for a moment of pride, she used it to cut me again. She told the moms that I was doing my best even though baking is not exactly her strength. More smirks, more stifled laughter, more cracks in my heart. In that moment, I understood something painful. They did not want my help. They wanted an audience to mock. They wanted someone beneath them to make themselves shine. And even though I swallowed the humiliation to keep the peace, a quiet part of me started to take notes. Every receipt, every invoice, every cruel comment. Because someday the performance would end and the truth would take center stage. ICU Day 1 began with a briefing from the attending physician, a calm man with tired eyes who spoke in a measured voice about ventilator settings, spontaneous breathing trials, swelling, and sedation levels. His words blurred together until he said Lily's name and my chest tightened as if someone had dropped a stone into it. I had cried so much that there were no tears left, only a burning ache behind my eyes. The room smelled of chlorhexidine and plastic, a sharp, sterile scent that made my stomach twist. Machines beeped in irregular rhythms, and every sound felt like a countdown. Nia, the nurse who had held my hand the night before, walked in with a warm cloth and pressed it gently to my forehead. She told me to breathe, told me that I needed to stay alert because Lily would need me when she woke. I stared at the tube strapped to my daughter's small face and wondered how the world kept spinning while mine had stopped. My phone buzzed, and for a moment I thought it might be an update from insurance or the doctor. Instead, it was a text from Joanne. 9 a.m. Cupcakes. Do not embarrass the family. A second one followed. Stop the drama, Rachel. Then another. Kids get hurt. Cupcakes at 9. It felt like someone kept slapping the same wound. My phone buzzed again, a voicemail from Joanne. Her voice sharp and dismissive, asking if I was planning to ruin Madison's day because my child scraped a knee. She did not know Lily was on a ventilator because she had not asked. She did not care enough to ask. I closed my eyes and counted my breaths the way the therapist once taught me after my divorce. 1, 2, 3. The doctor stepped back in to ask about insurance deductible copay out-of-pocket maximum. In America, trauma always comes with a bill. The case manager from billing arrived with an itemized estimate. ER physician fee CT scan, radiology interpretation ventilator hours, critical care medicine monitoring medication room cost, estimated $18,700. I felt my pulse in my throat. My deductible had reset in January and my out-of-pocket was barely touched. I nodded because I was too numb to speak. After she left, I opened my banking app and checked the UTMA account again. The balance was lower than last night. Panic shot through me. I called the bank and waited through tinny hold music while Lily's monitor beeped. When the representative answered, I asked about the withdrawals and whether someone could freeze the account until I sorted this out. She said only the custodian could restrict transfers, and the custodian on record was Joanne Lawson. I told her the funds were for my daughter's medical needs, and she said the custodian was allowed to withdraw for the minor's benefit. I laughed a painful, empty sound because nothing about those balloons or rental decorations benefited my child. The representative checked the notes and said there was a memo from the day the withdrawal happened. It read, "Party School Family Image." The words hit me like someone kicked my ribs. The bank kept recordings for quality assurance, so the memo had been typed by the agent who processed the request. It was written proof that the money meant for my child's future had been spent to polish Haley's reputation. I felt dizziness wash over me. I asked the representative to send a printed copy of the transaction history to my mailing address. She asked if I needed financial assistance forms, and something in her quiet tone made me want to sob again. I thanked her and hung up. As soon as I lowered the phone, it buzzed with another message. Joanne sent a photo of a cupcake tower and wrote the word inspiration as if I had nothing else on my mind. I stared at Lily on the bed, her chest rising with machine pressure, and something inside me cracked. This was not forgetfulness. This was cruelty. My family did not just ignore the gravity of the accident. They mocked it. They mocked me. A social worker named Tara stopped by to take notes for hospital records. She asked how long Lily would need care after discharge and if I had insurance to cover physical therapy. I told her about the deductible and how close the UTMA was to being financially gutted. She wrote everything down with methodical calm. When she noticed my hands shaking, she went to the canteen and brought back a small menu. Her smile was soft until she pointed to the daily special displayed on the tiny digital screen. Cupcake of the day, $2. The absurdity sent a burst of bitter laughter through my chest. Cupcakes again. Cupcakes in the hospital, cupcakes in my messages, cupcakes, while my daughter's lungs needed machines to move. I told Tara I might scream if I saw another cupcake. She chuckled and said hospitals are strange places where tragedy and absurdity share the same hallway. The next hour dragged like a chain. Every time my phone buzzed, I flinched. Messages from Haley now. Do not ruin the party. People are watching. Bring the cupcakes or stay away. It was like they thought my child chose to be in that bed just to interfere with their image. I typed a reply a dozen times and erased it. Nothing I said would make them care. I sat in the plastic chair and listened to the machines hum. The doctor returned, asking if I had family who could help with support. I opened my mouth and closed it again. Physically, yes. Emotionally, no. Financially, absolutely not. I wondered what kind of grandmother tells a mother to show up with cupcakes while a child is on a ventilator. Joanne had stolen Lily's future savings and now demanded baked goods as proof of loyalty. The hospital lights flickered softly. Someone in a neighboring room cried out in pain. This place was full of parents praying for miracles, and my own mother cared more about ribbon colors and photo backdrops. The humiliation was not public like at the church, but it was sharp enough to leave bruises inside my chest. I felt the sting of betrayal settle in my bones. When you realize family betrayal is real, it does not explode. It sinks, it settles, it becomes heavy. I held Lily's hand small and warm under my palm and whispered that she could rest and that I would not let anyone hurt her again. The words felt like a promise I had no idea how to keep. The phone buzzed again, not a message this time, but a notification from the bank confirming the mailed statement. Proof was coming. Truth was coming. And maybe truth could do what my voice never could. Tara returned with a list of local support programs for medical bills. She spoke gently as if she knew I was hanging on by a thread. Before she left, she said that some people look like family, but some people act like family, and the two are not always the same. I stared at Lily and held those words in my heart like a secret. Outside the window, the sun was rising, casting a pale light into the room. I whispered that I would find a way to turn this quiet humiliation into something louder. Paper beats noise, always. Then I heard the monitor beep in a steady pattern, and for the first time since the crash, I felt a spark of determination rather than fear. Revenge is not always fire. Sometimes it starts as a seed. The second day in the ICU felt longer than the first because the shock had worn off and the numbness was gone, leaving only raw nerves. The hospital lights hummed overhead and the beeping from monitors blended into a constant mechanical heartbeat. I had barely slept. My neck ached. My back spasmed every time I shifted in the plastic chair, and my mind kept replaying the crash, the text messages, the invoices, the withdrawal from the UTMA. It was like watching the same nightmare reel on a loop. That morning, a man in a Navy suit introduced himself as Marcus Bell Counsel for the hospital. His glasses rested low on his nose, and he spoke in a calm voice that made me feel grounded for the first time in days. He asked if there were concerns about how Lily's medical bills were being handled, or if there were issues with family acting as financial support. I hesitated, then told him what happened with the UTMA account. He listened without interrupting, nodding slowly, as I explained how Joanne convinced me to switch custodianship, how withdrawals were made, how Lily's needs were denied, while decorations and luxury were funded. I told him about the memo the bank representative read, the one that said, "Party School Family Image." He raised his eyebrows slightly and his voice sharpened with interest. He said Ohio has clear UTMA guidelines and funds must be spent for the benefit of the minor. He told me to send a preservation letter to Joanne immediately requesting 90 days of statements, and he would help me cite the law. He explained that a preservation letter tells someone not to destroy or hide financial information, because tampering with records after receiving one can create legal consequences. I felt something shift in my chest. For the first time, there was a path toward justice made of paper, not pleading. He sat beside me and typed out a formal letter on a hospital laptop asking for transaction history receipts and documentation showing benefit to the minor. He printed it and asked me to deliver it later or send it by email. Paper beats noise, he said with a small smile. When he walked away, I looked at Lily and squeezed her hand gently, feeling a flicker of hope. But family betrayal does not vanish just because you decide to fight. It bites again. My phone rang with Richard's name on the screen. I stepped into the hallway so I would not disturb Lily. His voice came sharp and irritated. He said I was causing unnecessary trouble. He said the family already helped by paying taxes and insuring things for years. He told me not to dig into the UTMA because families do not sue families. He said I was being dramatic again, making a scene. I wanted to scream that he had no idea what I was facing, no idea how many bills would pile up, how fast co-insurance and deductibles would swallow my bank account. Instead, I asked him to tell me exactly how he helped, especially since my deductible had reset at the start of the year and my out-of-pocket was nowhere near met. He stuttered, then switched topics, saying I should come to the party planning meeting when Lily was stable. I told him Lily was not stable, and he hung up. I stared at the blank call screen, my hands shaking. Every word was gaslighting. Every sentence was a trap to silence me. I walked back inside, heart pounding, and saw Tara at the nurse's station. She waved me over. She had begun a file titled Suspicion of Financial Exploitation of a Minor's Account. She said when a minor's funds are used for purposes that do not benefit them, social workers can request a review. She asked if I had screenshots, transaction history, or messages that could support my concern. I opened my phone and showed her the Venmo memo, the Instagram story of the giant balloon backdrop, the invoice I glimpsed at church, and the bank confirmation that a printed statement was on the way. She looked at each image carefully and nodded. She wrote notes in her file and said I was doing the right thing by gathering evidence. She said financial abuse is real even when it comes wrapped in family photos and polite voices. She encouraged me to document everything and keep a timeline. After she left, I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet called Ledger. I made columns for date, time, message, transaction amount, and proof link. I added screenshots, voicemails, texts, bank confirmations. I attached the Venmo memo and wrote a note beside it explaining that this withdrawal happened days before the party planning meeting. I added a column for emotional impact, even though it felt strange, because trauma leaves a record too. I worked on the ledger until my back throbbed. Nia came in with warm blankets and saw me rubbing my shoulders. She said ICU chairs are designed to keep people awake, not comfortable. She showed me how to do an ICU stretch by raising my arms and rolling my shoulders. I tried to follow her instructions, but my balance was off, and while she pointed to keep my elbows straight, the granola bar I had shoved into my shirt pocket fell into my coat sleeve and dropped onto the floor. Then a cookie crumb tumbled into my pocket. I froze mortified, and Nia burst out laughing. It was a small, startled laugh that swept the cold from the room. I laughed too, a short, messy sound, and for a moment the hospital felt less like a battlefield. She said sometimes the body remembers how to lighten the soul before the mind does. She picked up the crumb and handed me a fresh paper towel. I wiped my eyes, only then realizing I had started crying again. She placed a hand on my shoulder and told me that fighting for Lily did not make me dramatic. It made me a mother. After she left, I sat beside Lily and traced the soft curls on her forehead, wondering how many ways a family can break someone before they notice the cracks. My phone buzzed with another message from Haley, something about guests arriving early and whether the cupcakes had been boxed yet. I deleted it without reading the rest. The ICU was filled with sounds of machines and quiet grief. Somewhere down the hallway, someone whimpered into a pillow. A nurse whispered instructions to a doctor. The air smelled faintly of bleach and warm saline. I looked at Lily and thought about how her life had been measured in budget lines and party decorations by people who claimed to love her. I thought about how many times I ignored my instincts just to keep peace. Not anymore. Marcus returned with a copy of the preservation letter printed and ready. He asked if I wanted to hand-deliver it to Joanne, but I shook my head. He said certified mail works too because it leaves a record of receipt that can be used in court. Court. The word felt heavy and terrifying, but also like a promise. I signed the letter and sealed the envelope. For the first time in months, I felt steady. The paper in my hand meant truth. It meant accountability. It meant they could not shout or shame their way out of consequences. A nurse dimmed the lights and I leaned toward Lily, whispering that I would protect her even if I had to stand alone. The machines beeped in steady rhythm and I realized that the humiliation was turning into resolve. I opened the ledger again and typed one more phrase under the notes column. Paper beats noise. Always. Night in the ICU is different from day. During the day, there are footsteps and clipped voices and the soft rustle of nurses moving from room to room. At night, everything feels louder because the silence leaves room for fear. I sat beside Lily with my coat pulled around me, watching her chest rise with the ventilator and fall again, slow and steady, but not steady enough to feel safe. I kept looking at the clock, each minute stretching like an hour. My eyes were burning from staying awake, and just when I leaned back to rest my spine against the chair, Lily's body jerked. It was a sudden spasm, her small limbs tightening, her heart monitor jumping, and the alarm shrieked across the ICU halls. I froze. My lungs forgot how to pull in air. A nurse rushed in, adjusting her ventilator settings, pressing buttons, speaking calm words that did nothing to calm me because the machine alarm was too loud, the lights were too bright, and I felt like my own veins were full of ice. The seizure ended as fast as it began, and Lily went still again, but the fear clung to me like a second skin. The nurse said this sometimes happened when the brain was healing from trauma, and they would monitor her closely. But those words could not erase the image of her tiny body locking up in pain. I think that was the moment something inside me cracked, because there was no space left for family pride or cupcakes or humiliation. This was survival. This was life and death. And my daughter was fighting for her life, while the people who should have cared were busy planning photo backdrops and matching outfits. Her monitor steadied soft beeps pulsing through the room, and I finally exhaled. My hands would not stop shaking. I stepped out into the hallway with the phone pressed to my ear and called billing. The woman on the line spoke kindly, but her words sliced clean through my remaining strength. "The ICU bill so far is $18,700, she said. "We need to set up a payment plan or a deposit." My throat went dry. She listed line items: emergency room physician, CT scan, ventilator hours, medication, monitoring. I told her I was trying to access my daughter's UTMA, and she said she understood, but until funds arrived, the hospital needed a plan. When I hung up, I leaned against the wall and swallowed the rising panic. They were not just taking Lily's money for decorations. They were stealing the money she needed to survive. I walked back to the waiting area and sat down, rubbing my temples. My phone buzzed. A voicemail. The screen lit up with Joanne's name, and for a second I thought about ignoring it, but instinct made me press play. Her voice poured out of the speaker so loud the couple sitting across from me turned to stare. She said the UTMA was family property. She said she borrowed it for Madison because appearances mattered, and I should be grateful the family trusted me enough to help. She said I was an ungrateful embarrassment. The word ungrateful echoed through the waiting room with the same sting as a slap. I lowered the phone, cheeks burning. People stared. Someone whispered. I could see it in their faces, the confusion, the judgment. What kind of mother gets shamed while her child is on life support? Another voicemail came through. I did not press play, but the preview text was enough. Stop dragging this out. The party matters. Stop making everything dramatic. Something inside me twisted. I walked back into Lily's room, closed the door quietly, and stared at her small hand resting on the blanket. I had spent my entire life begging for scraps of kindness from these people. I had excused every cruelty as stress or misunderstanding, but there was nothing left to excuse. Lily nearly died, and they accused me of ruining a party. I picked up my phone and blocked Joanne's number, then my father's, then Haley's. Each block felt like cutting a cord that had been choking me for years. I opened the phone settings and blocked them on every app. No messages, no calls, no access. My hand still trembled, but my breath grew steadier. I went back through every voicemail left since the accident and saved them to a cloud folder labeled Evidence Family. I uploaded screenshots too. Every insult, every cupcake demand, every line that sounded like toxic family turning love into control. It felt cold and clinical, but it was the only warmth I had left because truth was the only shield. When the final file finished uploading, I looked around the room, wiped my eyes, and whispered to Lily that I was done playing the role they wrote for me. I picked up my purse, pulled out my home router login card, and opened the app connected to my Wi-Fi. I changed the network name. It used to be Lily and Mom Home. I renamed it No Cupcakes Fund. The absurdity almost made me laugh. Then I tapped into my phone settings and changed my ringtone for Joanne's number in case she used a different phone to get through. I set the tone to a harsh, mechanical breathing sound, like the ventilator that kept Lily alive. a reminder of why I was through with them. A reminder that every time they tried to shame me back into silence, I would remember the machine and the beeping and the child in the hospital bed. I sat back down, exhaustion pouring through me, but there was a strange new calm underneath it. The kind that comes after a storm breaks and the air clears. I leaned closer to Lily. Her eyelashes fluttered gently, her fingers curled slightly around her stuffed rabbit. I placed my hand on hers and whispered that I would protect her. I would fight the billing office. I would fight the law. I would even fight my own blood if I had to. Paper beats noise. I said it out loud this time, soft and certain. Paper beats noise. She did not open her eyes, but her hand twitched under mine, a tiny movement that felt like hope. If anyone asked why I blocked my own family, why I stopped answering calls, why I gathered evidence instead of arguing, I would tell them the truth. When someone shows you their loyalty as a price tag, you stop paying. I kissed her forehead, ignored the phone buzzing again, and decided that silent revenge would speak louder than any shouting match. If someone wanted to know the truth, I had proof. If someone tried to lie, I had the ledger. In that moment, I was not a crying daughter or a shamed sister. I was a mother with a mission, and I finally understood what survival looked like when the enemy lived in your own family tree. The ventilator hummed, and I rested my head by Lily's arm, whispering that she was safe now. Paper beats noise. Morning in the ICU never feels like morning. There is no sunrise, only fluorescent lights that never turn off and machines that never sleep. But something changed when I opened my eyes after drifting in and out of a shallow, trembling rest. The ventilator rhythm was different, softer, slower. I stood up so fast my chair screeched across the floor. A respiratory therapist adjusted the settings and told me Lily was taking some spontaneous breaths on her own. Not a full recovery and not a promise, but a sign her brain was trying to find its way back. My heart clenched and I covered my mouth to stop the sob that tried to escape. The therapist said they would reduce support gradually to see how she tolerated it. Hope is a dangerous thing because it hurts when it disappears, but in that moment, it felt like a warm hand on my back instead of a knife between my ribs. I sat beside her and held her hand, whispering that she was strong, that she was safe, and that I was fighting for her with every breath she took. Afterward, I stepped into the hallway where the hospital Wi-Fi flickered between weak and strong. The preservation letter that Marcus drafted sat ready in my inbox. I read it one last time. It requested 90 days of statements, receipts, reason for withdrawals, and documentation, proving benefit to the minor. It cited Ohio law in plain language, the kind of language that left no room for excuses. I typed Joanne's email, attached the letter, and sent it. Then I CC'd Tara, the social worker, and billing. I watched the email leave my outbox and felt a strange stillness settle in my chest. No yelling, no begging, just the truth in writing. Paper beats noise. When I returned to Lily's room, Marcus was waiting with a clipboard. He said we needed a second layer of protection because if the UTMA custodian was misusing funds, we should not count on that account for Lily's medical needs. He explained that a recovery account in Lily's name could be opened co-signed by him and me protected from family access. He said the hospital had partnerships with local banks for situations like this. It was meant for cases of family betrayal, financial exploitation, or custody complications. The words family betrayal hit hard, but I nodded. We filled out forms and I provided my ID. Marcus said we would link the account to my P.O. box to prevent anyone from intercepting mail. P.O. box felt like an invisible door I could close between Lily and the people who hurt us. He told me to freeze my credit too because sometimes when families feel exposed, they lash out with fraud or revenge. I opened my phone and pulled up Experian, then Equifax, then TransUnion. Credit freeze on all three. It took less than 5 minutes and felt like a lock sliding into place on a door that had been open for too long. The hospital printer clicked and whirred as the bank documents printed. Marcus handed me the folder and said everything was now recorded. He said if anyone tried to challenge it, there would be a paper trail. We stepped back into Lily's room and I kissed her forehead. Fighting back did not feel like anger anymore. It felt like oxygen. My phone buzzed. A notification from Zelle. I opened the app and stared at the screen. Micro-revenge does not heal a wound, but it stops the bleeding. I sent 1 cent to Joanne's number. The memo read, "For Cupcakes. The court will love this." Then I took a screenshot. Another piece of evidence for the ledger. Another reminder that if she wanted to talk about money and family image, she would have to do it under oath. My phone buzzed again, but I put it face down. Let her see the notification. Let her wonder. Let the silence speak louder than any argument. A hospital chaplain stepped in around noon. He had gentle eyes and a soft voice. He asked if I wanted to pray, and I nodded because prayer felt less like religion and more like breathing with someone standing beside me. He asked if I had family nearby for support. My throat tightened. I told him my family lived close, but they were not here for Lily, only for appearances and control. He said sometimes the hardest battles are fought with the people who should have protected us. He said forgiveness brings peace. I almost laughed. Not because he was wrong, but because I had tried forgiveness so many times it became another way to be used. I told him silence had protected them for years. Silence had let them steal Lily's money and call it family pride. Silence had let them treat me like help while demanding respect in return. Silence kept them comfortable. He listened without interruption, then asked if I wanted him to speak with them on my behalf. I shook my head. No. Silence protected them, not her. He looked at Lily's small hand curled around her blanket and nodded. He said sometimes justice is a form of love, too. After he left, I sat down and closed my eyes. I thought about the woman I used to be, the one who apologized before speaking, who tried to earn love like a wage, who believed family loyalty was the same thing as love. That woman was gone. When my phone buzzed again, I did not pick it up. Messages lit the screen, but I did not open them. Blocking them was not the end. It was the beginning. Later that day, Tara came in with forms confirming the start of a review regarding financial exploitation of a minor's account. She said once the preservation letter arrived, the bank would be required to hold all statements. She said if anything was missing, investigators would ask why. Proof makes liars nervous. She asked how I was holding up. I told her I was tired, but for the first time, I was not scared to fight. She left, and I sat beside Lily again, watching the ventilator rise and fall. There was still a long road ahead. Physical therapy, neurological checks, future bills. But the recovery account meant Lily had a shield, and the preservation letter meant the UTM money would not just vanish. I pressed my forehead to her hand and whispered that I had said no. Not a scared no. Not a quiet no. A legal no. A documented no. A no with teeth. A no with receipts and timestamps and signatures. Paper beats noise. Always. The machines hummed and Lily's breathing stayed steady. A nurse brought in a small stuffed rabbit someone had donated. I placed it beside her and held her hand. I did not need to yell. I did not need to beg. I did not need their approval. The most powerful word I had ever spoken was no. The fallout did not arrive as a dramatic explosion. It arrived as paper. On the morning of the 4th day, a hospital clerk wheeled a metal cart down the ICU hallway and stopped outside Lily's room. She handed me a sealed envelope from billing. Inside was the itemized ICU bill printed in clean black ink, each charge listed in a neat column. $18,700. Emergency physician, CT imaging, X-ray, ventilator hours, medication, monitoring. A second page listed dates that matched the exact timeline of Joanne's withdrawals from the UTMA. Line by line, the proof stacked itself into something undeniable. The money Lily needed had been used for a party backdrop and a DJ. I scanned the bill 3 times, each word, tightening something inside my chest. It was not the number that hurt. It was the betrayal written in math. I dropped the papers into a folder and walked to the waiting area where Tara stood with a clipboard. She said she requested a meeting with Richard and Joanne to discuss the UTMA concerns, and she wanted them to understand the severity. I told her they would not take it well. She said she was prepared. An hour later, I saw them through the glass doors of the lobby. Joanne's arms were crossed, her purse tucked tight under her elbow. Richard shoved his hands in his pockets, pacing like a man who believed he was inconvenienced. Tara greeted them near the reception desk and tried to speak quietly, but Joanne's voice rose sharply. People turned to look, mothers waiting for lab results, a father holding a toddler with an IV, nurses pushing carts. The lobby grew still as Joanne shouted that Lily was fine, that I was using the accident for attention, that the UTMA was family money and I had no right to question it. Richard joined in saying I should be grateful they allowed me to be part of the family at all. A security officer approached and asked them to lower their voices. Joanne snapped that she paid taxes and would not be silenced. A second security officer joined more stern, reminding them that this was a hospital and they were disturbing patients. When Joanne tried to step toward the ICU hallway, the first officer blocked her path and asked them to leave. Richard grabbed her arm and they were escorted outside. Through the windows, I could see Joanne still yelling in the parking lot, her hands waving hair shaking loose from its perfect style. The automatic doors closed and the lobby exhaled. A nurse whispered that the CCTV cameras would catch everything. Proof again. Proof that no matter what they said later, no matter how they twisted it, the hospital had seen the truth. Word travels fast in quiet places. By evening, I heard PTA parents whispering near the coffee machine. One woman spoke in a low voice asking if it was true that Lily's ICU funds were used for a party. Another said she heard the photographer pulled out of Haley's event sponsorship. Someone else said the balloon vendor backed out. I did not engage. I sat beside Lily and held her hand, letting the fallout breathe on its own. Marcus stopped by and dropped off another document for my file. He said trending community gossip was not evidence, but reactions could pressure people who cared about image more than morality. The next morning, a nurse at the front desk showed me something on her phone. A GoFundMe had appeared online titled, "Help Maddie's Party Because Aunt Flaked." It claimed the party funds were gone because I refused to contribute after promising I would. The goal was $6,000. The story called me dramatic and selfish without using my name, but it did not need to. Anyone from our community would know exactly who it meant. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding. I asked who created it. The organizer name was listed as Haley. There was no surprise. Only exhaustion. It took less than an hour for someone to report it. Parents screenshotted every line and tagged GoFundMe support. One donor commented that they wanted a refund because the story felt false. Another posted a photo of the itemized ICU bill with names hidden and wrote, "This is where the money should have gone." GoFundMe froze the campaign, flagged the account for review, and refunded every donation. The page vanished as if it had never existed. I did not gloat. I did not post a victory message. I just added screenshots to the ledger. One more entry in the timeline of family betrayal. Later that afternoon, a group of PTA parents approached me near the vending machine. One mother apologized for ever believing the jokes about me being dramatic. Another said she wished she had helped sooner. I thanked them, but I did not want pity. I wanted Lily safe. When I sat back in her room, my phone vibrated with notifications from Facebook groups and school threads. People were asking questions. Some were angry. Some were stunned. Haley's perfect mom image was cracking like cheap glass. She tried to post a long explanation, but every comment under her post was the same sentence repeated over and over. Please refer to the itemized bill. Someone tagged me and asked if I wanted to comment. I replied only once. Please refer to the itemized bill. I attached a redacted copy of the ICU charges and closed the app. Micro-revenge does not need fire. Sometimes it only needs facts. The more Haley deleted comments, the more people reposted them. Parents who once admired Joanne's leadership in the PTA began to whisper that perhaps her charity work was not charity at all. One father wrote that he would never donate to a PTA fund managed by a family that could take a child's medical money for a party. The ripple spread through church, too. Someone sent me a screenshot of a group chat where members asked if Joanne should remain on the finance committee. Someone else asked if Haley should still coordinate events. No one mentioned my name. They did not need to. Reputation can collapse without a single punch when the truth is heavy enough. I walked back to Lily's bed and kissed her forehead. Her breathing was steadier now. Nurses smiled when they checked her vitals. A doctor said her numbers were moving in the right direction. Nothing was guaranteed, but the shadows felt thinner. I sat with the laptop and organized the digital folder labeled Evidence Family. Screenshots, voicemails, GoFundMe posts, PTA threads, hospital CCTV request form. The itemized bill sat on top. When I uploaded a fresh scan, I typed a single note at the bottom. Paper beats noise. Every time. A notification flashed across my phone. Someone tagged me again. Please refer to the itemized bill. I smiled without showing teeth and placed the phone face down. The fallout was doing what I could not do with anger. It was showing the truth, showing that toxic family can rot from the inside long before outsiders notice. And tonight, the rot was visible to everyone. May arrived with warm air and blooming trees along the sidewalks of Hyde Park. But inside me, everything still felt cold. Lily was healing slowly awake for short moments, smiling with tired eyes, and the doctors said time would do the rest. I carried that hope with me when Marcus asked if I was willing to speak at the Family and Health program at the Hyde Park Community Center. It was a small event meant to raise awareness about medical hardship and community support. He said it could be educational, nothing dramatic, nothing personal, if I was not ready. But when I walked into the community center on the evening of the event, I saw the crowd and felt a tightness in my chest because so many familiar faces were there. PTA parents, teachers, neighbors, even some church members who had always believed Joanne's version of every story. At the back of the room, standing near the doorway, were Joanne and Haley. Their arms folded, their mouths tight, their eyes cold. They did not approach me. They did not ask about Lily. They only watched. The MC introduced Marcus first. He spoke about medical costs, about families who struggle in silence about the weight of hospital bills. Then he introduced me without fanfare, saying simply that I was a mother who understood the financial reality of pediatric emergencies. My hands trembled, but I walked to the front. A projector screen glowed behind me. I took a breath and spoke. I told them what happened to Lily, how a red light and a speeding SUV changed our lives, how the ICU became our second home. I read the line item totals from the itemized bill, $18,700. It was the first time many people in that room heard the real price of keeping a child alive. The room fell silent. Then Marcus clicked to the next slide. The projector filled with the image of the itemized ICU bill with personal identifiers redacted. Gasps rippled across the room. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Someone else covered their mouth. Then Marcus clicked again. The next slide showed the UTMA withdrawal history, $5,450, dates, times, bank confirmations. The screen glowed like a courtroom exhibit. I felt my pulse in my throat. Marcus read one line of Ohio law clear and sharp. UTMA funds must be used for the benefit of the minor. The room shifted. Eyes widened. Heads turned. People looked around as if trying to locate the villain in a story that suddenly became real. Marcus clicked again. The third slide showed a screenshot taken from Haley's Instagram story. Giant balloon arch. DJ equipment. A printed invoice corner visible. The caption read, "Madison deserves the best. I did not say a word. I did not need to." The room filled with a terrible, heavy silence. One more click. The fourth slide showed messages. "Bring cupcakes. Do not embarrass us. Stop the drama." The phrases hit harder when displayed 20 feet wide, projected in front of 100 people. The humiliation they once used against me became their own. In the back of the room, Joanne's face went pale. Haley's hands dropped from her hips. No one spoke. Finally, someone whispered they spent her ICU money on a birthday party. Another voice said, "That is disgusting." Marcus stepped forward and said in the calm tone of a lawyer who knows the law is on his side that the recovery account was open, secure, and legally protected. He said anyone who wished to help could do so without fear of misuse. The MC blinked, stunned, then nodded at the volunteer behind the donation table. The board lit up on the projector. People reached for their wallets, phones, credit cards. In 10 minutes, the total on the board soared. $2,000, $8,000, $14,000, $27,380. A woman in the front wiped tears from her eyes. A father clapped his hand on my shoulder and said, "My daughter deserved every cent of that and more." I felt the weight of months lifting off my chest, replaced with something like oxygen. Community was doing what family refused. I glanced toward the back. Joanne's jaw trembled like she was trying to hold her face together. Haley looked as if the floor tilted under her feet. They had always loved attention, but this was a spotlight they could not escape from. I did not speak to them. I did not accuse them. I did not need to. Their silence said everything. The MC cleared his throat and tried to bring some lightness back to the room. He said refreshments would be served after the closing. Then he added, without thinking, cupcakes after the program, and the entire room broke into laughter that was sharp and bitter but real. A few people covered their mouths, trying not to seem cruel, but the irony was too strong. Cupcakes had become a symbol of everything wrong in the story. It was dark humor, but in that moment, laughter felt like justice. I stood there, holding the microphone, not smiling, not triumphant, just steady. I said, "Thank you for seeing us. Thank you for believing the truth." I said Lily was getting better and that every donation would help her heal without the shadow of debt. Applause filled the room. Real applause, not polite clapping. Applause that carried anger and compassion and vindication. When the event ended, people lined up to hug me not out of pity, but out of outrage for what had been done to my daughter. Some asked how they could help with meals or transportation to therapy later. Others simply said, "I did the right thing." When I stepped out into the hallway, I saw Joanne and Haley near the doors. They did not shout this time. They did not tell me to stop the drama or keep quiet for the family image. They said nothing. Their faces were stiff and pale. People walked by them whispering under their breath. Others shook their heads in disapproval. Reputation shattered quietly, and there was no cupcake big enough to cover it. Marcus handed me the donation confirmation paperwork with a small nod. I told him thank you, but the thanks was too small for what he had done. He told me I had done the hardest part. I walked outside into the warm evening air, feeling the cool breeze against my face. For the first time in months, I felt like someone had lifted a heavy stone from my chest. The sky was still bright, and the world looked bigger. The community had stood with me when family would not. As I reached the sidewalk, my phone buzzed. A message from a PTA group member tagged me. It said, "Team dignity over money always. Standing up for yourself is not drama." I typed a simple reply. "Thank you for supporting Lily. If anyone asked me then which side I was on, I would answer without fear. Team dignity over money. Team truth. Team standing up for yourself." 3 days after the community center, when the donations had cleared and Lily had been moved from ICU to a regular pediatric room, the doorbell at my apartment rang. It was late afternoon, the lights soft and golden across the living room floor. I checked the door camera before opening because the last thing I needed was another surprise from anyone in my toxic family. Joanne stood there on my small porch, her handbag clutched to her chest like a shield. She had makeup on, hair styled, but her mouth trembled at the corners. When I opened the door, she stepped inside without waiting for an invitation and looked around as if expecting a camera crew. Her first words were, not, "How is Lily?" or "Can I help?" She said we should talk like adults. This embarrassment has gone too far and family should not destroy family. I leaned against the counter and waited. She pulled out an envelope, placed it on the kitchen table, and said she could give me something toward the bills if I would take down the slides, delete the posts, and correct the misunderstanding. The misunderstanding. As if $5,450 vanished from a miner's account for a child's birthday party was a small clerical error, as if the world laughing about cupcakes was my fault. She tried to smile. She said she regretted letting things get out of hand. She said mothers make mistakes. She said forgiveness would show maturity. Then she lowered her voice and asked me to remember who helped raise me when I was a single mom. The kitchen felt like a courtroom again, but this time I was not shaking. I reached into my tote and placed a stapled packet on the table. Checklist for respect. Printed in black and white, neat formatting columns aligned numbers crisp. The look on her face shifted, not fear, not shock, but something almost offended. The first condition was a public apology emailed to me and copied to the church list and the community center coordinator, acknowledging misuse of UTME funds, acknowledging the humiliation, acknowledging the harm. The second condition was repayment of the full $5,450 plus $1,500 in late fees and damages paid in 12 installments with documented receipts. The third condition was 24 months of no discussions about money loans or family financial demands. The fourth was the removal of every social media post mocking me or Lily, with screenshots provided as proof. She stared at the document like it was written in another language. She tried to laugh. She said only an accountant would turn family into a ledger. I shrugged. Paper beats noise. She picked up the packet and flipped through it, page by page, eyes darting. The door camera chimed, recording her pinched expression. She tried to negotiate. She said paying back the money was possible, but the apology was too humiliating. She said Haley could handle it with a cute post instead. She said I should meet her halfway. I pointed to the door. She raised her chin, smoothed her hair, and announced that this was not over. She said there would be consequences if I did not choose peace. She walked out with stiff shoulders. The door clicked shut and I exhaled. 10 minutes later, my phone rang. Richard's number. He began with his usual authoritative tone, the voice of a man who believed he always knew best. He said the garage was getting slammed with 1-star reviews, accusing him of stealing a child's money. Sponsors were threatening to drop support for the PTA. People were calling the house. He said I had gone too far. I repeated the policy in a calm voice, paper or silence. Your choice. He demanded to know who had coached me. I said the truth did not need a coach. He said the family looked ridiculous and that I needed to issue a clarification, something neutral, something that would protect them all. I asked if he had read the itemized bill. I asked if he had held Lily's cold hand while the ventilator hissed. He went quiet. That silence was louder than his anger. He said the garage could go under. I said he should have thought of that before spending a miner's account on balloons and DJ lights. He hung up. That night, I sat beside Lily's bed and told her the truth. Actions have consequences. Sometimes consequences arrive late, but they arrive. I kissed her forehead gently because she still had a healing scar near her temple. A few nurses walked past and smiled, whispering that the community center talk had inspired parents to check their own insurance policies and ask billing questions. One nurse said revenge does not always scream, sometimes it signs paperwork. I laughed under my breath. Later that week, Joanne returned. This time, she did not barge in. She knocked and waited. When I opened the door, she held the packet with trembling hands. She said she would sign, but she wanted me to know she never meant to hurt Lily. I did not argue. Intent was nothing without accountability. She signed all pages. I notarized them with a bank officer who lived in the building across the street. She looked away the whole time. When she left, she whispered sorry, but the word had no weight. It was not spoken to Lily. It was not spoken publicly. It was spoken only because she had to. That weekend, church families whispered again, but this time for a different reason. Joanne had sent the apology email. She blamed stress and poor judgment, but the core remained. She admitted what she had done. Some people forgave her. Others kept their distance. It did not matter. The ledger was balanced. The first payment posted to the recovery account the next day. During her visit, while she stood on my porch trying to maintain dignity, the door camera blinked red. The lens caught everything: the stiff jaw, the forced apologies, the moment she stumbled on her own words. Later, watching the footage, I noticed something funny. Her voice cracked every time she said cupcakes, hilarious in a dark way. She muttered under her breath that I was dramatic, that accountants had no soul. But numbers do not lie. Payments continued. 1 month, 2, 3. Sometimes late, sometimes barely on time. But they came. That was the power of paper, not promises. Richard called once more. He sounded tired, older, smaller. He asked if I could publicly say we had resolved it to help the garage recover. I said when the last installment was paid, and when every mocking post was gone, and when the humiliation was not mine anymore, I would consider silence. Not praise, not absolution, just silence. He tried to convince me that a united front was best for the family. I repeated the same line: paper or silence, your choice. When he realized I was not bending, he muttered something about lawyers and hung up. I did not worry. The law was already on my side. The recovery account balance was proof. The apology was proof. The door camera recording was proof. Lily slept peacefully that night. I sat beside her bed and felt something new settle inside me. Not triumph, not gloating, just steadiness. Revenge story money turned into justice. Family betrayal turned into accountability. Toxic family finally faced consequences. And I did not raise my voice once. Just one quiet mother with a folder full of evidence and a spine made of paper, not fear. When Lily was finally discharged, the hospital hallway looked different in the morning light, softer, less mechanical. The monitors were gone. The beeping had stopped. A nurse handed me a folder full of aftercare instructions and smiled with the kind of warmth I had not felt in weeks. A physical therapist from the hospital, a gentle man named Carl, walked us to the exit and reminded me that healing was slow but certain. We stepped outside and Lily squinted like she was seeing the sky for the first time. At home, her bed was surrounded by small comforts blankets. Folded, stuffed animals returned to their places. The first session of at-home physical therapy started 2 days later. Slow stretches, short steps, exercises that looked tiny but meant everything. Each movement was proof she was still here. One afternoon, Nia knocked on the door carrying a paper bag with stickers that said, "For courage." Lily picked a purple star and pressed it to her cast. I nearly cried watching them. Recovery became routine, breathing checks, small walks, a new laugh every day as her strength returned. While Lily healed, so did the balance of power in our family. The PTA held a closed board meeting and quietly removed Joanne from the finance committee. The same mothers who once whispered jokes now turned their backs. Someone forwarded me a screenshot of Haley's suspension notice from the event coordinator group. 6 months of no planning. No public face, no donations, no spotlight. Church elders posted a neutral announcement about the responsibility of adults managing funds for minors. No names, but everyone understood. The community was small. People talked. People remembered. Toxic family behavior had consequences. The phrase family betrayal echoed through Sunday school halls. A few neighbors delivered meals without asking. Some left cards on the porch telling me they were praying for Lily. I accepted the help. I learned that quiet justice travels on its own legs. While this unfolded, Marcus sent the final demand letter. He included copies of the apology, the repayment schedule, and the UTMA records. His words were calm and undeniable. If payments lapsed, we would forward everything to the county prosecutor and file in small claims for damages and breach of fiduciary duty under Ohio law. I printed the letter and placed it with the others in my binder. Paper beats noise. When the second installment posted, the bank flagged 2 earlier transactions for review, $1,840 and another $1,120, both tied to a different March event. The total misuse climbed above $7,400. Marcus called and said the repayment plan would need to be amended. He sounded almost amused by the audacity of it. I updated the ledger, a tiny act of revenge story money that tasted like control. When Joanne emailed asking for clarification, I activated a new auto-reply that said, "Please see the repayment schedule attached." It was dry, polite, devastating. She must have opened it again and again, realizing each click was another admission of guilt. Sometimes justice is not loud. Sometimes it is paperwork and time. Meanwhile, Lily grew stronger. Her casts came off. The scars faded. She asked if cupcakes were still bad luck. I told her cupcakes were just sugar and flour, only people made them bitter. She giggled. On a warm day in June, I drove her to Alt Park. Sunlight dripped through the trees. The grass smelled alive. Lily took small steps, then bigger ones, then walked without holding my arm. Every wobble was a victory. A few families watched from picnic blankets. One mother whispered that she had seen the community center slides and that I was brave. I told her I was just a mother who ran out of silence. Lily chased a butterfly for 5 seconds before stopping to breathe. I sat on the bench and watched her, feeling the weight of those hospital nights melt. My phone buzzed. Another installment posted. The ledger grew repayment by repayment. I did not cheer. I did not gloat. Justice without hate feels like exhaling after holding your breath for months. Rachel, the quiet woman. Rachel, the accountant. Rachel, who used to fold under pressure. She was gone. A new version stood in her place, steady and unafraid. Lily ran back to me and held my hand. She said, "We are okay." The words landed gently, like the butterfly in the grass. Yes, we were okay. Not perfect, not healed completely, but safe. No more begging for small kindnesses. No more humiliation for cupcakes. No more betrayal hidden under family pride. As we walked back to the car, sunlight danced through the leaves overhead, and I realized something powerful. I had not raised my voice. I had not thrown a plate. I had not cursed anyone publicly. I had simply shown the truth and let it breathe. People made their own judgments. Consequences found their targets. Money returned to the child it belonged to. Every step Lily took was proof that quiet justice exists. Before buckling her into the seat, I whispered that we were free. Driving home, the radio hummed, the windows open, warm wind curling around us. The city seemed softer than before. At a red light, Lily pointed to her sticker and said, "For courage." I smiled. Courage is choosing dignity over noise. Courage is protecting a child even when family stands in the way. Courage is signing papers instead of shouting. When we reached the apartment, the mailman handed me a stack of envelopes. One was a bank notice confirming the revised repayment schedule. Another was a thank you card from a family we had never met, saying our story helped them demand accountability too. Revenge emotional turned into quiet justice, and in the end, closure mattered more than winning. Sometimes healing is not loud. Sometimes it is a small girl taking steady steps in the sun while her mother breathes without fear. If you believe truth and closure matter more than shouting, leave a comment saying, "Justice without hate."